Hi Divas, welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk about whatever I want to, but mostly books. I am very excited to film this video because we are talking about one of my favorite authors, if not my favorite author, Sayaka Murata. If you don't know who Sayaka Murata is, she is a Japanese author who's known for her kind of dry, weird, messed up books. Her characters don't really fit society's expectations of them, and there's a lot of social commentary in these books. I have read all of her work translated into English, and most of them I've reread multiple times. So I think that makes me a pretty good authority figure on Sayaka Murata, so I thought I would do a beginner's guide to her works. And if you've already read these books, still stay tuned to hear my thoughts about them because I love talking about Sayaka Murata books. Oh my god. But I also understand that Sayaka Murata is not particularly the easiest author to recommend. Like I said, she is very messed up. She writes very weird books with really dark themes. So I want to be able to give you all of the knowledge that you need going into these books without giving you a huge plot summary. Because part of the fun of reading Sayaka Murata is not knowing what's going to happen next. So I don't want to give you any spoilers, but I want to give you enough context to go into these books and love them. I'm going to go through these in the order of which I think you should read them, but I'm also going to rank them along the way. Personally, I recommend that you start with Convenience Store Women. The reason being is that it is a very easy, digestible book, especially in the Sayaka Murata canon. It is her most real and normal book. It's the book that's placed the most in our real world, along with characters that feel the most real as well. Don't get it twisted, the main character, Keiko, is strange. She is weird, but she's not as weird as some of the other Sayaka Murata main characters. This book also has a ton of heart and soul and love. At the end of my edition, there is an essay from Sayaka Murata about the convenience store where it seems like she worked at a convenience store for a really long time, so this is a very personal book for her. And the descriptions of this convenience store really are beautiful. She's able to take something that shouldn't be extraordinary and make it extraordinary. It's pretty short and easy to read. It's like 170 pages. The pages are small and the font is fairly big. This is a very easy 1 to 2 sitting book in my opinion. In my opinion, it's also her funniest book. Every once in a while, I'll just flip through this book and read the lines that I've underlined, and I'll just remember exactly how funny this book is. The basic 1 to 2 sentence plot summary is that this follows a woman named Keiko who works at a convenience store, and she has worked at this convenience store for 18 years or something like that. Maybe just 8 years. I feel like 18 is a little crazy. It might just be 8. I think I'm lying. 18 years! Oh my god, I was right. You better work. And it follows society's expectations of her as kind of an older woman who is still single and still works a part-time job at a convenience store. When I first read this, I had read this immediately after Earthlings, so I was expecting something a lot darker and a lot more twisted, and I didn't get that. But I recently reread it, obviously knowing what I was getting into, and I enjoyed it a lot more. So while I would still say this is my least favorite Sayaka Murata book, it's still a 4-star read for me, and I honestly feel really bad saying that this is my least favorite because I do deeply love this, and I would love to reread it soon, even though I just barely reread it. It's a great starting point. It's a short, easy read that introduces you to Sayaka Murata's writing style, as well as her themes that she gets into without getting too weird and too dark. After you read Convenience Store Women and you want to move forward, I would recommend going to Earthlings. Now, if you've read Earthlings, you know that this is kind of a crazy jump. And a general statement for this book and the other 2 books, I'm not going to give trigger warnings for these because trigger warnings are spoilers, and that's what they're meant to do. They're meant to spoil so that you know what you're getting into. But again, I want to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. There is a major trigger warning that happens in the last chapter that I knew about going into it that I really wish I didn't. So I'm just really hesitant to say anything about this book, including its trigger warnings. But what I will say is that this book has almost every single trigger warning under the sun, and so if you are sensitive to darker literature, Storygraph has a great feature for its trigger warnings. I would highly recommend looking them up. And that doesn't just go for this book, that goes for all of her books. Now you may be thinking, Kaiden, if it's really that dark, if it's really that fucked up, why do you recommend that I read this next? And that's because I think in terms of its prose, its themes, and its social commentary, it's a lot more accessible than the other two are. Whereas Earthlings is fucked up and dark, I feel like the other two books are weird. And I feel like once you read these two books, you're basically ready for any Sayaka Murata book because you got her tamest out of the way and you got her darkest out of the way. The quick summary of this is that this follows Natsuki, who believes that she is an alien because she doesn't really fit in with her family or with society. She goes on a family trip, shit goes down on this family trip, and it follows her childhood and adulthood and the aftermath of this event. This is my favorite of Sayaka Murata's. This is a 5-star read for me. I feel like in abstract, it's a really fun book, not while you're reading it because it is so dark and crazy, but in my opinion, the first part of Earthlings is that darker, crazier, really fucked up social commentary, and then it kind of gets into darker, crazy, campy horror territory, which makes this extremely stressful to read, but then also a lot of fun to read. And I feel like it also is very comforting for anybody who has ever felt like an alien in their life. Again, I think that this is a great next step because you're getting her craziest scenes with her most accessible writing. So it has this balance of showing the worst of her themes while still priming you to get into her weirder stuff. Next, I recommend that you read Life Ceremony. This is Sayaka Murata's short story collection, and this is one of the most consistent short story collections that I've ever read. Obviously, you're going to have hits and you're going to have misses, and this book does have its misses, but the hits hit, and I still think about so many of these stories like on the daily basis. If I had to choose, my 3 favorite stories are A First-Rate Material, Puzzle, and then the titular Life Ceremony story. I think about this titular story basically every single day. I love it. I think it's so fascinating. I think it's so interesting. It's so fun to read on a first time, but it's equally as enjoyable on a second read. I feel like her writing style is a bit more experimental in this. She's definitely playing around with things that she doesn't play around with in her novels, but it also still has that classic Sayaka Murata touch and vibe to it. But like I said, this is a very weird book. Its writing style is a bit more experimental and varied from story to story. It has its hits and it has its misses, and for that reason, I think I need to say that this is my 3rd favorite book of hers. But like I said, some of these stories I think about all the time. I love so deeply. And gun to my head, if I had to tell you my favorite short story collection, it would probably be this. And then last, but certainly not least, I have her most recent book that was translated into English, and that is Vanishing World. I genuinely believe that you will only truly appreciate this if you've read the rest of Murata's work. In my opinion, this is her weirdest book. It has the weirdest setting, and it has the strangest themes. And so it is fairly inaccessible to a new Sayaka Murata reader. I also have noticed that this book is pretty divisive, and the people who have liked it have read the rest of her works, and the people who didn't love it haven't read all of her work. Again, I know that this is divisive, but I gave this 5 stars. This is my 2nd favorite Murata book. What I love about this book is that the rest of her works feel like strange characters in our normal world, but this feels like a really normal character in a really weird dystopian world. What I also love about this book is that we don't start off in this dystopian world, but we are rather in the transition of this society. So there's a lot of commentary and questions on when we should hold on to the past and when we should move forward to the future. This book follows Amine, who learns that she was born through copulation rather than artificial insemination, which has become the norm in this world. Artificial insemination has become the standard way to give birth to children, to the point where sex between married couples has become as taboo as incest. And we follow basically her entire life and her emerging sexual identity in this changing world. Once again, it follows this really interesting time in this world where not everybody has gotten on board, but most people have. For example, throughout the book, her mom tries to indoctrinate her into this more classic romance because again, Amine was born through copulation. But all of her classmates find this taboo, and so she really is struggling with this push and pull. It builds and builds to this crazy third part that made me physically nauseous while I was reading it. And like most other Murata books, I read this in one sitting because I was just so desperate to figure out what was going to happen next. But again, like I said, I think that this is fairly inaccessible with some really weird themes and a really weird writing style and some really weird characters. So I would only read this once you've read the rest of Murata's work. So that was my beginner's guide. I hope that you learned a little bit about Sayaka Murata. I hope that you added some of these to your TBR. If you're interested in reading any of these books, or if you have read any of these books and have thoughts about them, I want to hear them. Leave it in the comments below. I love to talk about Sayaka Murata, and she is an author who I do love, but I also understand the critiques against her, and I do love hearing them because in my mind, it honestly just deepens my appreciation for these books because I never agree with it. I understand it, but I can always find a way around it in my brain. You should like, and you should comment, and you should subscribe, all of the fucking YouTube things, and add all of these books to your TBR.